A world champion MMA fighter from Mexico stood on American land, pointed right at the camera, and shouted, "Chuck Norris is a chicken. America's time is over." What he didn't know was that just a few days later, those words would pull Chuck Norris out of hiding. And soon, Chuck would have to deal with the world seeing him in a way he didn't want, his pride and name put on the line. If that part made you excited, hit that like button. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe, because the next part gets even more intense. Tell that cowboy Chuck Norris I'm the one now. Diego El Martillo said. His time was when people thought movies were real fights. But this isn't Hollywood. This is Mexico. This is real. Diego poked his finger toward the camera, then leaned back in his chair like he was proud of himself. His shirt collar was dark with sweat, but not from being tired. It was the kind of sweat made for TV, shiny and flashy. His gold necklace moved as he crossed his legs. He chewed his gum like it owed him something. The room went really quiet. Not because people were amazed, but because they felt kind of embarrassed. Most of the reporters there knew who Chuck Norris was. They knew his history, his movies, and how tough he used to be. But no one said anything to stop Diego. Maybe they were curious what else he'd say. Or maybe they didn't want him to get mad at them. "Let's be real," Diego said as he sat up and brushed his pants. "Chuck Norris is just a made-up story. You Americans made cowboys and action heroes like Rambo into superstars. But while you were watching fake fights and eating popcorn, we were fighting for real in Mexico. We earned respect the hard way." A Mexican flag waved behind Diego. It was clean and bright, carefully placed there by his team to look good. The lights hit his sharp jaw and tan skin just right. He gave a wink at the cameras. So yeah, if old Chuck Norris is still alive out there in Texas, maybe he should just stay on his horse and teach kids how to do karate poses. But if he comes near my ring, I promise I'll knock him down and crush every old American story with him. That part was shown that night on TV all over America. No cuts. No edits. Just a champion with a big grin, trying to tear down a legend. And the camera didn't stop rolling. Back in Texas, it was quiet. The morning moved slowly over the hills of Mason County. A soft wind carried the smell of grass and dirt. Out past a little creek, there was a small white farmhouse. Its paint was peeling, and its porch sagged a little like it was tired but still strong. That's where Chuck Norris lived. He was older now, quieter. Most people forgot how old he was. The movie people had stopped calling. His wife had passed away years ago. Chuck spent his time taking care of horses, fixing fences, and teaching martial arts in the barn to local kids. He didn't charge them money. He always said, a man should share what he's learned. People around town respected Chuck. They called him Mr. Chuck or Coach, even though he never asked them to. To them, he wasn't just someone from TV. He was part of history, still here, still real. One of the kids Chuck taught was Luca. He was 14, skinny like a fence post, with freckles and a habit of hiding his hands in his sleeves. Luca came to Chuck a year ago after two bigger boys beat him up at the bus stop. At first, Luca didn't talk. He just watched. But after a few weeks of hitting the punching bag and learning how to breathe and balance, Luca changed. He didn't get loud, but he looked stronger. His eyes were sharper. He stood taller. Chuck noticed. He didn't smile much, but when he saw Luca sparring and not running away, he smiled. Then, the buzz started. People at the feed store were talking about a camera crew coming to town. A sign went up in the diner window. It said, "Live event, Serrano in Mason." It was part show, part boxing event. Diego El Martillo Serrano had come to town. He was 29, born in Sonora, raised in Guadalajara. He'd won all 32 of his fights, with 28 knockouts. He had a strong punch and a big mouth. People said he didn't respect anyone, not even his own coaches. He came to town with two big SUVs, a team of helpers, and a camera crew filming him like he was a movie star. He wore shiny boots, cool sunglasses, and held his chin up high. The town buzzed with excitement. People peeked through windows. Kids skipped school. Even old Mr. Harold, who hadn't left his house in years, came to see what was going on. Chuck didn't say much. One night, he and Luca watched the news together, eating chili from mismatched bowls. The TV showed Diego boxing in front of the Mason Town Hall with loud mariachi music playing. The headline said, "Serrano brings fire to Texas." Chuck muttered, "Guess he's got energy." But 2 days later, at a press conference, Diego was sitting like a king at a table with logos all over it. 2 guards stood beside him. He wore a snakeskin jacket and smiled like he owned the world. A local reporter, half joking, asked Diego if he'd ever heard of Chuck Norris since Chuck lived nearby. That's when Diego leaned into the microphone and smiled wide. "Chuck Norris," he said out loud. "You mean that cowboy actor? That walking joke? Please." Some people laughed. Diego wasn't done. "Look, I don't care how many silly movies he made or how many jokes people tell. That old man's time is over. He can stay in his barn teaching kids how to breathe and balance. That's not boxing. That's babysitting." The room stayed silent. Diego got louder. "You know what's funny? How Americans still look up to old heroes like Chuck Norris. Like ghosts from when they ran the world. But look around now. America has no real fighters left. Just actors. Guys who quit when things get tough. In Mexico, we fight for food, for respect, for our lives. That's why I'm champion. And Chuck should stay out of my way before I have to break his ribs to shut everyone up." The video went viral fast. It had over 2 million views in an hour. People made memes, jokes, and comments. Some said Diego went too far. Others said Chuck would make him pay. But mostly, it was laughs. Luca saw it first. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the screen, then walked outside, his fists clenched tight. Chuck followed him onto the porch. Luca stared at the hills. He didn't talk. Then he whispered, "If you don't say something, coach, people will think he's right." Chuck didn't answer right away. He looked out at the field. The horses were grazing. The sky was turning orange. He sighed, rubbed his beard, and said softly, "It's not about proving him wrong, son." Luca turned. "But it is to us." Chuck looked into the boy's eyes. They were steady now, burning like they cared deeply. Something changed inside Chuck. It wasn't just about Diego anymore, or even the insult. It was about Luca. It was about this town. About standing up when someone calls your whole country weak. Chuck remembered his own teacher. The first time he was knocked down. How hard it was to get up. How long he trained. And how many people were watching now, kids like Luca who needed to see what real strength looked like. That night was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't sit beside you. It sneaks into your heart, brings old memories up, and doesn't leave until you face it. Chuck sat on the porch until the moon was high. He didn't drink. Hadn't in years. But that night, he wished he did. Not to run away. He never ran. But to find calm, like when the world gets noisy and you just want peace. He watched the stars like he used to watch an opponent's feet, focused, waiting for the right moment. Luca's words kept echoing, "If you don't say something, coach, they'll think he's right." Chuck had always believed being quiet was a kind of strength. That a man didn't need to yell to be respected. He lived like that. But now, after what Luca said, he wasn't sure anymore. Was that strength? Or had he just stopped caring? That question stayed with him all night. And when the sun came up, it was still there. By late morning, everyone heard that Diego Serrano was doing a live show at the community gym. It was just for promotion, with a fake ring, some reporters, and a sound guy with walkie-talkies. The town was buzzing. Every teen with a phone was rushing there. Chuck didn't plan anything. He didn't practice. He just woke up, put on his old boots, pulled on a jacket he hadn't worn in 10 years, and walked out the door. No cheering crowd. No ride. Just a man with something to settle, walking down a dusty road. He looked tired, but his eyes looked like steel. When Chuck walked into the side door of the gym, everything got quiet. A camera guy whispered something. The sound guy cursed. And Diego, standing in the ring with his gloves over his shoulder, turned to look. Chuck stepped forward. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He stood there a moment and said calmly, "I heard you've been talking." Everything froze. Then Diego laughed. Loud and fake like he just heard a joke only he thought was funny. Well, well, Diego said, shaking his head. Look what the desert dragged in. I thought you turned to dust by now. Chuck didn't say anything. Diego smirked. So, are you here for a selfie, old man? Want me to sign your grandpa's shoes before you wobble back to your barn? Chuck took a step forward. I came to say something, not to ask for anything. That made all the camera people move. They rushed around like hungry sharks, pointing their cameras, ready to catch everything. I'm not here to be on TV, Chuck said. His voice was calm and quiet, so people had to lean in to hear. I'm here because words matter. And sometimes, being quiet can be worse than saying the wrong thing. Diego crossed his arms and smiled in a mean way. Is that supposed to mean something? It means this, Chuck said. You said what I teach is fake. You said this country is weak. You made fun of all the kids who fall down but stand back up. That's not just rude. That's like a sickness. And sickness spreads. He stepped forward again. I'm not just here to defend myself. I'm here to remind everyone that there's a difference between showing off and standing up for what's right. And if I have to fight one more time to prove that, then I will. The gym went super quiet. For a moment, even Diego didn't say anything. Then he started clapping slowly in a fake way. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, turning to the cameras. Look who's back, Grandpa Chuck. He pointed at Chuck. You think you're teaching kids how to fight? You're teaching them to dream small and stay quiet. You won't last even one round. One punch from me, and you won't even remember your name. Chuck just nodded. Maybe, he said, but I won't forget who I am. Within an hour, the news picked up the story. They called it Norris versus Serrano, the big fight. Everyone was talking about it. Some people said Chuck was too old and slow. Others said he was brave for standing up, even when he didn't have to. Diego loved the attention. He was on TV, radio, and podcasts. He laughed on talk shows, made fun of Chuck's voice, and showed off videos of his workouts. He said he would knock Chuck out like breaking a paper plate. He even made a silly video pretending to be in an old western, with a fake tumbleweed and everything. Where's your legend now, America? He joked. Chuck didn't say anything. He went back to his barn. Not to train harder. He already knew what he needed to do. He went back to the old ways. Slow moves. Deep breathing. He didn't eat special food. He didn't hire a coach. He didn't count punches or use timers. Instead, he got up with the sun, stood in the field while the fog rolled over the grass, and moved his arms like he was young again. He remembered what his teacher told him long ago. You don't fight to beat someone. You fight to understand yourself, just before pain comes. Luca, a young boy, came by every day. He didn't talk much. Sometimes he handed Chuck a towel. Other times, he asked questions, not about punches, but about fear and how to stand strong when people laugh at you. Chuck answered with stories. He took his time. You don't wait until you're ready, he told Luca. You step in when the moment needs you. The rest, you learn in the ring. By the end of the week, posters were everywhere. The little fight became a big event on TV. Tickets sold out fast. People drove in from other states. Mason hadn't seen this much traffic since the fair in 1978. The night before the weigh-in, Luca asked, "Aren't you scared?" Chuck sat in his old chair, rubbing oil on his boxing gloves from 1994. I'd be more scared if I stayed quiet, he said. That night in the barn, with bugs buzzing and the roof creaking, Chuck whispered into the dark. I'm not here to prove anything, but I'm not going to let them tell lies, either. That Friday night felt slower than normal. Or maybe it just seemed that way because something big was coming. People in town felt it too. The wind was still. The dogs were quiet. Lights turned on early like folks wanted to stay inside and think. At the fancy hotel in Mason, Diego El Martillo Serrano wasn't praying. He stood shirtless on the balcony with a drink, showing off his big muscles. A camera crew was inside, filming him. His trainer sat on the couch flipping through a magazine. Diego lifted his glass and said to the camera, "To the end of American boxing, and to whatever's left of Chuck Norris after tomorrow night." He went back inside, dropped onto the couch, and smiled. "Did you get that?" he asked the cameraman. "Yep," crystal clear. "Good," Diego said. "Post that online by midnight. I want people to wake up knowing I've already won." He didn't train that day. He just threw a few lazy punches for the cameras. Then he ate steak and chocolate cake. To him, this was just another job. Another payday. Maybe a cool video if Chuck didn't fall too fast. But 10 miles away, Chuck Norris was in his barn, tying his boots. He had been up since 4 a.m. No cameras. No noise. Just soft hoof sounds from his old horse, Tilly, walking beside him through the fog. She seemed to understand the weight he was carrying. He didn't talk. "I just walked and breathed in the cold morning air." He stopped at a rock near the fence. He used to sit there with his wife before she got sick. Today, he didn't sit. He stood and looked out at the misty fields. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small folded photo. The edges were curled and cracked. In the photo were 4 men: Chuck, Raymond Ironpaw Delaney, Jean Sue Kwan, and Lou the Wall Jenkins. All of them were gone now. They had trained together in barns and basements long before they were ever on TV. Chuck stared at the photo and said softly, "I'll step up. Not for me, but for what we believed in." Back inside, he made his tea with lemon, no sugar, just the way he liked it. He wrapped his hands with old boxing wraps, slowly and carefully, like reading a special book. Every wrap reminded him of something. His first dojo. A broken rib in 1972. A fight in Thailand. The student who quit and the one who didn't. When he was done, he looked at himself in the mirror, not to judge, just to see the man he was. Not a hero. Not a legend. Just a man with something still left to do. That evening, Luca came by. He looked scared, even though he tried to hide it. Chuck sat by the window, watching the sun go down. He didn't turn around when Luca spoke. "I saw what people are saying online," Luca said. "They think you're going to get hurt." Chuck nodded slowly. "Maybe," he said. Luca didn't speak for a while. Then he ran over, dropped to his knees, and hugged Chuck tight. "I don't care if you win," Luca said, crying. "Thank you for standing up. Thank you for not letting him say mean things and get away with it." Chuck placed his hand on Luca's head. "A teacher doesn't fight to win," he said. "He fights to show what matters. Remember that." Luca nodded, face still pressed into Chuck's shirt. They stayed like that for a while. No more words needed. That night, something changed in the town. At the church, Pastor Hall lit a single candle. Then more people started lighting candles too. At the diner, in the gas station, in windows and on porches, soft lights began to glow. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't a sad moment. It was something else. It was respect. People shared stories. Wendell Shaw told his grandkids how Chuck once pulled a man out of a burning truck. Ms. Dolores remembered when he fixed her freezer for free. At the VFW hall, old soldiers wiped tears from their eyes telling how Chuck visited every Veterans Day. They weren't just remembering the past. They were remembering how Chuck lived, quietly, kindly, with heart. Even people in the next town, who used to call Mason boring, lit candles too. That night, Chuck didn't watch TV. He didn't look at his phone. He stood in the barn and watched the wind move over the field like a wave. He felt it in his bones. Not fear, not worry, just the strong feeling of purpose. He said a prayer, not for safety, but for clear hands and a calm heart. When the town grew quiet again, and the candles twinkled like stars, Chuck sat on the porch, pulled a blanket around him, and closed his eyes. He dreamed of a boxing ring, not the one from tomorrow, but one from 40 years ago. He saw the sweat, the cheers, the other fighter's breath just inches away. But this time, he wasn't in the ring. He was watching. And in the middle of the ring stood Luca, older, stronger, brave. From the shadows, Chuck whispered one thing. "Remember who you are." It was just past 4:30 in the morning when people started coming to the town square. Mason had never seen so many people in one place, not even for the fair with a Ferris wheel and goat tricks. But this was something special. A fight. But not just any fight. This was a fight between something old and something loud. A man made of time and quiet strength. And a storm in the shape of a young man. Young, proud, and fiery. The ring was right in the middle of the town square, built on a wooden stage with bright lights glowing above like giant fireflies. The ropes were tight and super white. The floor of the ring was clean and smooth, like it didn't know it was about to get messy. Reporters were everywhere. They had shiny badges clipped to their belts. Cameras sat on their shoulders, with long cords running across the stage like messy spaghetti. Tiny flying drones buzzed in the sky, filming for TV stations. These stations didn't care about Mason's town, not until they saw the name Chuck Norris on the list. Behind the stage, in little tents that worked like locker rooms, two very different men got ready. Diego El Martillo Serrano was already wrapping his wrists. His team stood around him, laughing loud. One of them even recorded him putting on gold-trimmed gloves. "Y'all ready to watch history?" Diego smiled big. "I'm going to break that old man and put him to sleep." He bounced on his toes, rolled his shoulders, and punched the air like a snake ready to strike. His body looked like a machine made of muscle. He didn't need quiet. He needed the spotlight. And the spotlight loved him. Across the way, Chuck sat alone in his tent. His head was down, fingers still. He hadn't spoken since morning. He just breathed slowly, letting the noise outside blow past him like wind through grass. He didn't rush to wrap his hands. He took his time, wrapping and unwrapping the same bandages carefully. His gloves were old. Brown leather, soft with lines from all the years of use. They were heavy, not just from the padding, but from all the punches and protection they had given over the years. When it was time to step out, Diego came first. He was shirtless under his robe. The crowd roared like at a football game. He smiled and raised both fists. Loud music played, booming with deep bass about power and victory. The announcer shouted his name like he was already the winner. Then Chuck walked out. No music. No shouting. Just the sound of his boots on the wooden floor. He wore a hoodie with long sleeves. A few people in the front clapped softly, people who still remembered him from 20 years ago. He didn't wave. He didn't nod. He just climbed the steps and ducked under the ropes like he was walking into a church. When both men stood in the middle of the ring, it looked almost funny. Diego was shiny with energy, clenching his jaw, chewing the inside of his cheek like a bull waiting to charge. Chuck looked like he had just finished chopping wood. Calm, steady, with relaxed shoulders. His eyes said nothing, but also said everything. The bell rang, and Diego rushed out like a blast. The first 30 seconds were loud and wild. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Every punch was so strong it made the ring shake. But Chuck didn't punch. He didn't even block. He barely moved. Just small steps, tiny tilts, slow rolls. It didn't look like much, until you saw that Diego hadn't hit him once. Not once. The crowd leaned forward, quiet now. Diego grunted and punched faster, tighter combos, but still missed. Chuck's breathing never changed. He didn't flinch. He moved like he was listening to something else. Not the punches, but the space, the air, the rhythm. When the bell rang, Diego laughed like a dare and spread his arms. "Y'all see that? He's scared to swing." But the crowd wasn't laughing. Something had changed. Their cheering wasn't wild anymore. It was curious. Maybe even respectful. Because they saw this wasn't a trick. It was real. In round 2, Diego came in harder. Still no punches from Chuck. Diego tried to hit him in the body, pushing him into the corner. Chuck gave up space easily, letting him close in. He still didn't fight back. Still didn't hit. And yet, Diego couldn't land a punch. Now sweat dripped down Diego's face. He was breathing harder. Not tired yet, but annoyed. He had fought people who blocked or ran. But this wasn't that. This was different. His hands hurt even though they were hitting nothing. "Fight back, you coward," he shouted, throwing a huge hook that almost spun him in a circle. Chuck moved so softly, it didn't even look like he moved at all. And then it happened. Somewhere in the last minute of the round. A look. A breath. Chuck raised his eyes to Diego. Something had changed. That quiet inside him, it was warming up. Chuck didn't tense up. He relaxed. And he stepped forward. That one step made Diego stop. Not because it was fast, but because it was so sure. Like something ancient had just woken up. Diego punched again fast, But this time Chuck's arm moved, just a little. A block. Then another. Then he pushed the punches away. For the first time, Chuck touched Diego's gloves. Not to hit. To guide them away. And Diego, who was used to smashing through people, felt something twist inside. Chuck was watching him so closely, he could tell what Diego was going to do before he even did it. Like Chuck had been studying a storm all night, and now he knew where the wind was blowing. The crowd saw it too. They leaned in. Quiet. Diego punched again, faster now, but a little messier. Chuck didn't dodge fast. He just leaned back enough to let the glove brush past his jaw. Then Chuck smiled. A small, calm, tired smile. That smile made Diego step back. He didn't know why. He wasn't hurt. But for the first time, he wasn't in control. When the round ended, Diego turned to his corner and hit the ropes with his gloves. "He ain't fighting," he yelled. He's reading me like a book." His coach tried to calm him, wipe his sweat, and tell him to slow down. But Diego's pride was louder. Across the ring, Chuck stood still, hands at his sides, breathing slowly. His eyes now looked sharp, like something was coming. The bell for round 3 rang like a big iron bell in the hot Texas evening. The air was thick now, like a heavy towel around your neck. Diego rushed from his corner, already shouting. "You scared, old man?" he yelled, spitting a little. "Are you just going to dance like a little girl?" Chuck didn't blink. He just breathed slowly through his nose. Diego's eyes got smaller with anger. He clapped his gloves together with a loud smack. "That's what I thought. Coward. You don't even belong in this ring. You're not a fighter. You're a memory, and a bad one." He stomped around the ring like a mad bull, faking punches. Then he shouted louder so the cameras could hear. "This is why America's fight game is dead. All bark, no bite. You cheer for cowboys and movie stars because you have no real fighters. Just old bones in dusty barns." That made something move in Chuck. His fingers squeezed just a bit inside his gloves. He didn't look at Diego. He looked through him. Far away. But Diego wasn't done. He was walking around the ring, talking to the crowd. "Your martial arts are dead. All those black belts teaching moms and wannabe cops how to bow. Useless. Your country is weak. I fight for pride. I don't care about legends. I break them." Then he smiled meanly and leaned close enough that the referee almost stepped in. "America made you soft, Chuck. And I'm going to finish the job." For the first time in the whole fight, Chuck looked right at him. His face didn't change. But his eyes, wow. His eyes looked like sharp steel. Diego threw the first punch. A big one. Chuck moved just enough to let it slide past. Diego tried a hook. Missed. An uppercut. Missed again. He was fast. He was strong. But Chuck wasn't moving faster. He was moving smarter. He let Diego chase shadows, wearing himself out. Then it happened. A tiny moment. So small, most people would miss it. But the ones watching closely, they felt it coming. Chuck stepped in. Just one step. His heel touched the floor. His weight shifted like the ground said, "Go ahead." Diego blinked. Chuck's right hand moved. Not hard. Not angry. It moved like he knew it would work. Like memories. Like the truth. The punch didn't make a big noise. It didn't look like much. But it landed right in the middle of Diego's chest. Diego stepped back. Once. Twice. 3 times. His gloves dropped. He looked confused. His legs were still there, but barely. Then he fell. Like a big tree with no roots. He didn't bounce. Didn't kick. Just lay flat. Eyes open, lips moving like he couldn't find enough air. And for 3 whole seconds, no one said a word. Not the crowd. Not the ref. Not the announcers. It was like time itself stopped from that one punch. Then the count began. 1. Still quiet. 2. 3. Chuck stood still. Didn't lift his arms. Didn't move. 4. 5. Diego's chest moved. Just a little. 6. The ref leaned in. 7. The crowd buzzed softly. 8, 9, 10. It was over. Not with blood. Not with screaming. Not with a punch that broke anything. Just with a punch that landed deeper than the body. The ref waved. The announcer spoke loudly, like thunder. Winner by technical knockout. Chuck Norris. Then the crowd cheered. But not wild. Not crazy. It was the sound of respect. Chuck walked to Diego. He didn't rush. Didn't smile big. He knelt beside him. His eyes are calm. Diego coughed once. Looked up. And what he saw wasn't someone who beat him. It was something steady. Chuck leaned in and said softly, just for him. Fighting's not about showing who's bigger, son. It's about showing who you are when all you got left is your name. Diego closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. Maybe from pain. Maybe from something else. Chuck stood and held out his hand. And Diego, the tough, loud champion, reached up slowly and took it. He stood up, shaky. No cheers for him, but no boos either. Just a long, quiet pause. Then a soft clap. It grew, like wind across the fields. And when Diego stood beside Chuck, bent but standing, the crowd roared. Not for the punch. For the man who gave it, and the one who learned from it. Later, when the lights were being taken down and most people had gone home, a boy named Luca stood by the ring. He watched Chuck walk alone across the floor, his gloves hanging by his sides. The cheers were already fading. Did you enjoy the story? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. If you had a great time, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell so you're always in the loop for the next adventure. Thanks for joining me, and as always, stay curious, stay brave, and keep exploring.